Hey, what's up, everybody? It is Uncle Mad. We are live for our usual Friday night live stream here on the channel. And this one's going to be pretty heavy on the Nashville SC content. We got a lot to chat about this week. A whole lot happened off the field, on the field, just no shortage of topics to talk about this week. Right out of the gates, we got Richard in the chat with Let's Talk About Maritime Messi. He will certainly be amongst the topics we talk about today. He was, how can I say this? He was quite the target in the match last night. So we will definitely be talking about Maritime Messi, but we got, a Champions Cup match to recap. We've got all the pre-match drama that was going on around the club. And believe it or not, there's another match coming up this weekend and then another match coming up midweek next week. Once again, against our favorite friends down at Inter Miami. So tons of stuff to chat about. Thanks to everybody that's jumping in and joining in. And for the watch party, let's jump right into it and start with, I guess, where we got to start at the very beginning. A very good place to start. Last week in the build-up to the CONCACAF Champions Cup match against Inter Miami, before we even got to the game, there was tons of drama, tons of issues surrounding the ticket prices, the who was going to be sitting where type stuff. And I got to be honest, I'm really glad I didn't do a live stream before the game. I thought about like Wednesday or Thursday afternoon jumping on, just doing a quick short one just to talk about the game and some of this stuff. And my headspace was in a very different spot at that point in time. I probably would have said some things I wish I hadn't said, probably would have gone after the wrong people, probably would have, targeted things in the wrong direction because there were certain things that were agitating me about the. If you know what I'm talking about, let me back up just a second. So obviously, anytime Lionel Messi's coming into town for any of these matches, CONCACAF Champions Cup, MLS matches, teams are trying to capitalize on him. He's the biggest draw in the league. Prices are going up. I was upset because my tickets, if I wanted to go to the game last night, were going to be about $200+ more than they are for a normal game, whereas other areas of the stadium were only up by like $50. I didn't think that was very fair, but it's not anybody's fault other than the people that set those prices, which are people within the club. And as annoying as that is, I also kind of understand the point of view. You only get so many chances to do this, to make some money, bringing money in. Hopefully, you can make the club better. At least that's what I'm telling myself, to try to feel better about it. But it was frustrating. But ultimately, I was not able to go to the match anyway because I was reffing a high school soccer game here in the Nashville area, which we had a beautiful night, beautiful weather. So my game did not get rained out like I hoped it would, letting me go to the game. Because after all the drama with the ticket prices, all the issues and all that, it ended up being like, I think the get-in price was less than $100. Like this one got priced way too high. I think they were hoping to get some of the same level of demand they had for the League's Cup final match. But I mean, Thursday night match, round of 16 in the CONCACAF Champions Cup, not the same allure. Also, not the first time Messi was there, the pomp and circumstance. David Beckham wasn't in the building this time. There weren't a bunch of celebrities on hand for the game. Is very different atmosphere, different type of place. So, ultimately that it didn't play out the way I think people thought it would with the prices. The tickets were set very high from the get-go, but ultimately did not quite get that. I was checking my section because I just want to see what ultimately they went for, because I think my seats, had I bought them, were going to be like $267 face value, if I remember correctly. And I checked yesterday afternoon before going into the game that I was reffing to see what seats in my section were going for, resale, and they dropped to as low as $150. So I had thought about buying my tickets and maybe trying to resell them. I'm glad I didn't, because clearly I would have lost some money on that one. And clearly I probably would have given those tickets to an Inter Miami fan that, also losing money. So, but that was another thing I kind of want to talk about. Like, one of the big things people seem to like flip out about with the ticket prices were, oh, they're pricing out Nashville SC fans. It's going to be all pink. The whole stadium's going to be pink. It's going to be all Messi fans. And I had the same thought at League's Cup final that I did for this game. Like, why do we assume Miami fans and Messi fans have more money than Nashville SC fans? Why do we just assume just because the ticket prices got elevated that means we can't go, that only Miami fans can go? I mean, when I got home from my games, I put on the DVR, the replay of the match, and there's some pink in the stadium. Yeah, maybe a little bit more opposing colors that you'd see in, a normal match, but it wasn't like Miami fans took over the stadium. It wasn't like, oh, no Nashville SC fans could get in. The supporter section was as packed as it's been and I don't know how long. Like, there was not a space to step, a step to breathe. Look, just this is me watching TV. So, like, people that were in the stadium may have had a different perception, but from the TV broadcast, it looked like that was as packed as the supporters section in maybe since the first game of the season last year. It was definitely more Thursday it was for our home opener against Red Bull New York. I can say that for sure. Yeah, it didn't seem like there was this overwhelming takeover of Miami fans, and I've never fully understood that with Leagues Cup. With this match, I didn't understand why there was this narrative amongst our fan base that, the club's priced us out to give all the tickets to Messi fans. It's like, are Nashville SC fans inherently poor and like Messi fans are like rich and can afford more expensive tickets? That didn't seem to be the case. But also, like I said, the get-in price dropped substantially from what the initial ticketed price was on the game. So none of that turned out to play the way it did. So like I said, I want to say sympathize with the club. I don't want to say I'm like give the club the benefit of the doubt on the ticket price thing, but I'm not. It agitated me more that my specific section got elevated more than others. Like, if you're going to elevate everybody, that's one thing. But like, I feel like they were specifically, I said this in the last week's live stream. I think they kind of targeted areas that they weren't as worried about upsetting. Like, supporter section only went up about $50-$60, I think. So they thought like, yeah, that's a substantial increase for some people, but it'll be a little bit quieter from them. And the ultimate, like, people sitting in the regular sections and stuff like that won't put up as much of a fuss as like the supporter section would. They also didn't elevate the club section as much. I think they also thought like our highest price ticket people you will be more upset if we try to gouge them too. So like I said this in last week's live stream. I think they kind of like selectively targeted who they price gouge. And I was amongst those that got selectively targeted. So I was a little agitated about that, but ultimately I think the get-in price dropped so low that it really didn't come to fruition. Where I really think the club screwed up, and I really think they're going to have to do some damage control at some point in time in the next weeks or months. So there's these two sections on the edge of the standing supporter section. I believe it's 105 and 111 if you're looking at like a stadium map of Geodis Park. Previously, both of those sections were a part of the standing room only supporter section. In the offseason, preseason, sometime around there, the club announced that they were converting those to seated areas. And at the time, they said they were still going to be supporter section, but that they wanted to offer the opportunity for fans who wanted the supporter section experience, but wanted to have seats to be able to do that. That was how they sold it, as I recall. This is, I could be completely misremembering. The club would like me to think I'm misremembering. I know that, but it came out about a day or two before the match that if Inter Miami fans had bought tickets in those sections, they would be allowed to wear Inter Miami jerseys, which is not permitted in the supporter section. So this caused a big fuss, rightfully so, within the supporters. Like, how are you going to let the opposing fan base sit in the supporter section? That's like the craziest thing you could possibly do. So rather than like, and I'm sure they sold these tickets for a lot of money and couldn't back down on it at that point in time, the club came out and said, we mislabeled 105 and 111 as supporter section. They were always intended to be converted into just regular general seating that didn't have the same restrictions that the supporter section is. So stupid, so boneheaded. If they did, in fact, mislabel it, somebody's got to get fired over that. If this is their retroactive way of trying to like gloss over that Miami fans were going to be allowed to sit there because they paid so much money to sit there, one way or the other, somebody's going to fall on the sword and get in a lot of trouble for this one way or the other. And a lot of people have said this, and I think they're probably right, that at some point in time, the club's probably come out and said, hey, we apologize. We made a mistake on this. This was supposed to be supporter section. We will do better going forward. But now they've already made their money off the Miami fans that bought those seats, which once again, why do Miami fans have more money than Nashville fans? I don't get that part of it. But yeah, and even that, like if you looked in the game, like the supporter section on either side of it, you saw like 1 or 2, 3, maybe pink jerseys in those little side sections right by the supporter section. But it wasn't like this big, like, overwhelming Miami takeover that I think people were worried about. I understand they should not have allowed those people in there. They should not have done this whole we mislabeled the section or whatever. That was the one thing that really, like, from the club's perspective, set me off. Like, that was the one thing I thought they botched just horribly, because like the rest of it, like I said, I try to be realistic. I try to understand how the world works. I like I said before, if every single decision my teams, whether it's the Titans, Nashville SC, Vanderbilt, for crying out loud, Manchester United, the Predators, if every decision they made was purely based on what's best for the fans, what's best for the sporting performance of the team, that would be ideal. But I am a realist enough to know that's not how the world works. So I try not to get like overly agitated about stuff like ticket prices or stuff like that. But when the club's just like retroactively redoing things, like the supporter section is not actually a supporter section, that's where I'm on the bandwagon and like, this is bull crap. We got to raise our voices and say something about this. That was, to me, of all of the issues, all the drama pre-match, that was the one where I was like, this is the club done goofed up on this one. So that's it. But we had a great match. We had it was a fun game. It kind of, those feelings are going to linger for a little while. A great match, great sports can fix anything. I mean, in general, being a sports fan kind of always sucks. Like there's one team per league that gets to enjoy being a sports fan every season. Everybody else at the end of the day, unless you're just like, I mean, maybe the Lions, like in football this year, maybe they were just happy to have been there. I don't know. But 9 out of 10 times, every team but one hates the season, hates the end result, hates what happened, and everything just sucks. So I try to, like, as much as possible, not dwell on those things that suck that much and just kind of try to find the silver linings, move forward, try to be happy. With those two supporter sections, I did want to mention the side ones. I think in 105, I could be wrong about this, was where the famous crock block of Nashville SC fans had previously sat. Feel bad for them that they lost their section. Feel bad for them that that is no longer being considered a supporter section, apparently, according to the club. I bought a pair of Crocs in solidarity. I've been fighting the Croc bandwagon for a while. I wore Crocs when they weren't cool because I worked in this food service industry for decades. And that was we were like, us and nurses and doctors were the first ones to wear Crocs back when I was like, Crocs suck. Finally bought a pair of Crocs. Finally caved and bought a new pair of Crocs. Support for the Croc block. Also support for the fact that I think my toe is permanently disfigured from arthritis or something like that, and I need more comfortable shoes. So joining the Croc block. Wanted to mention that. Shout out Croc block. What else we want to talk about? Man, that was a lot of stuff. I think that gets through the drama. We got a lot in the chat. Let's jump in the chat, see what everybody's saying real quick, just to catch up real quick. What do we got? We got my guy, Richard says, you were great with the Battered Herons Boys podcast. It was a great show. Yeah, shout out those guys. I've been on with them a few times because we keep playing Miami. So I keep, they're an Inter Miami podcast. Keep going back on there to preview these matches. I will be back with them. I think we're doing a live stream together Monday night to preview the second leg there. So if you haven't seen their stuff before, they're good. I really like them because they're like even-keeled fans. Like we can go on there, we can banter a little bit, we have a good time, but it's not like trash talking, it's not like anger and stuff like that. They're pretty reasonable. I mean, obviously they're riding high right now given everything that's happened in the last 9 months for their club, but they're not like braggadocious. They're cool guys. I like going on with them. I'll be back on with them Monday, I believe. Richard also says, I have listed my TFC ticket for the Messi game on Ticketmaster for $2,000. Yeah, I mean, for especially like TFC, some of these clubs, like we've gotten Messi twice now, so I think that also kind of devalued the market on our tickets. And also a Thursday night game versus the Leagues Cup final was a Saturday night game, so there weren't many traveling fans coming in for that, I don't think. But yeah, I wouldn't blame anybody in these clubs around the country, to just throw a crazy price on there, see what you can maybe get for it. Especially like Toronto, which Toronto's looked okay so far this season, a little bit better maybe than last year. Maybe they got their Italian guys buying in, maybe the new coach jumping over from the Canadian national team is going to get a little spark going there. But some of the lower teams that have struggled, yeah, if you can get $2,000 for a ticket, I'm not going to turn my nose up to that. Hunter Welch says, Air should be out of a job. There's star player pricing, and then there's royally screwing people over. Yeah, it's hard because, I'm sure Ian Air is involved in this, but I've always kind of got the feeling, don't know anything about the operations behind the scenes of the club. I've always kind of had the feeling he was kind of what's a way to say this? I don't know how many decisions he's actually making as how much of he's like a well-spoken, he's a good face for the club. He's good to go in press conference. He's good to do media events. He's good to speak and stuff like that. I don't really know how directly involved he is in the ticket pricing. I would guess there's an analytics, marketing group that kind of tried to figure out what the best price was, and he probably signed off on it. I don't see Ian Air going into a room and going, "Oi, lads, let's make the prices 400% bigger than they were." And even if he did, like I said, I kind of understand how it works. If we come back next year and they try to jack up my ticket for every game like $60, I'll start to have a problem. But one game, one time, I was pissed about it. I've passed on. I've let it go. I will say this about Ian Ayre. If you are amongst the people that are blaming him for stuff that want to get him out of Nashville SC, the ticket price thing, stuff like that, it's not the way to go. Because, I mean, the way sports franchises, mostly in America, more so than in Europe, work is the owners want to make money. So if Ian Ayre did something that made his owner money, his owner's going to be happy about that. But if you look a little deeper, if you maybe go out onto Broadway some Saturday nights, some Friday nights, you might see some things that might give you a different way to figure out a way to get Ian Ayre out of the club. I'll leave it at that. What else we got? Yeah, we said no, it was super packed. Like I said, yeah, I think the concerns, people probably paid more than they would have liked to pay, but I think ultimately the prices dropped enough that people that could go got in, and it looked like it wasn't like an overwhelming Miami crowd or anything like that. We got Sean just said her battery's running low, but she's trying to stick with us. She tried to get some text in. I don't know if I've seen him yet, Sean. Sorry if I missed him. What else do we have here? We got Hunter said club is going to have to do some major butt kissing over, smooth that stunt over. Yeah, I think they'll do something. There'll be some kind of PR thing. I do think I kind of tweeted about this and kind of alluded to it. I think the timing of the announcement of Hani Mukhtar's contract extension, then I really thought it when they actually brought him out on the field and announced it pregame. I'm like, this is definitely trying to hey, forget all that other stuff. Look at this shiny thing. We've got Hani Mukhtar for 4 more years or whatever it is. There was definitely, that was phase one of if they're trying to clean things up, putting Hani Mukhtar out there on the field, giving him a microphone to be like, I love the club. I'm so happy to be here for the next 3 years. That was definitely part of that. 100. Yeah. 100 confirms. Croc Block was 105. Yeah. Shout out Croc Block again. I've got some Crocs in. Maybe I'll swing by, see those guys in a game coming up sometime soon. We got Llama Vomit saying, should have a live coyote mascot. That would be really cool. I mean, I would be shocked even at some point in time if a coyote didn't wander into the stadium. I mean, that's where it all started from. It was just a random coyote wandering into the Music City Center, which it's funny. If you live in Nashville, I think you see wildlife in more weird spots than ever. Like deer specifically is what comes to mind. I see deer in the weirdest spots now. And I think it's because we have so much construction, so much development. All the animals are running out of spaces to be. So wouldn't surprise me if a coyote wandered into the field. But I think most teams are moving away from live animal mascots, except some of the colleges that are kind of grandfathered into being able to have stuff like that, like LSU. Do they still have a tiger? Does LSU still have a live tiger available? Ian Ayre. All I know about Ian Ayre is he left Liverpool disgrace after a ticketing scandal. Yeah, as I recall, that one kind of was similar to our situation, and they tried to smooth it over. They tried to build it over. They tried to fix it. But I think it was partially that. I think he was kind of the fall guy for that. But that was once again kind of from because I was reading about that because I was trying to I saw a lot of people posting about that with our ticket issues. So I was trying to get more information to that. It seemed like he was kind of once again, like I kind of mentioned, he was kind of the front-facing guy. He was the guy that had to talk to the media, that had to try to explain it. But it seemed like it was more of a driven by ownership thing with Liverpool's ticketing deal. And I think he kind of fell out just because they had the period. I want to say he was still part of the group that brought Klopp in, but then they kind of cleaned house shortly after Klopp. I could have my timeline wrong on that but I feel like I've heard him take credit for bringing Jurgen Klopp to Liverpool, but then he kind of phased out in a different way or something like that. So like I said, I don't know how much he is fully involved in the actual decision making with Nashville SC and how much he's just like a front-facing kind of PR kind of guy. I get that vibe from him that he's not he's just happy to smile and talk about the club and do stuff. I don't really know how much. I don't know. I could be completely wrong on this, but it's just something I've just kind of the vibe I get off him when I've met him, when I've heard him talk, when I've seen interviews with him. He doesn't come off like a businessman, like a guy who's deep into the weeds of figuring out what the best practices and stuff like that are. And the way, once again, seeing him on Broadway and places like that, he doesn't seem like he's that smart about how to do things all the time. So we'll see. I live in Huntsville. I've seen Deer and Fox's University of North Alabama has live lions on campus. LOL. That's a fun one. Yeah. I've been down to Huntsville a little bit lately. I went down there for the first ever game for the MLS Next Pro Club. I've reffed a few college games on there. Have I done a North Alabama game? I might have been down there for a North Alabama game to ref down there. I don't know. I have so many stuff like that. I can't keep track of that. But yeah, a lot of stuff in the chat there. I'll let the chat kind of dwell now and we'll move on just to talk about the actual game now because we talked about kind of the pregame stuff, talked about all that drama. It's going to take some time. there's some wounds that need to be healed, but we can move on from that. We can start to move forward and hope the club has learned some lessons. Hope we as fans have learned some lessons about how we react. Because I definitely think there's some bad reactions. Like I said, my initial reaction, if I'd done a live stream on like Tuesday or Wednesday, would have been very poor looking back on the way I was thinking about talking about things. The one things I wanted to say that day. I'm glad I didn't. I think there's going to be some fans who at some point in time will also say kind of, hey, maybe I shouldn't have, I don't know, not overreacted is probably not the right word, but maybe targeted things in a different way, thought in a different way. So I'm ready to move on. I'm ready to like start the healing process, I guess would be a good way to say it. And the best way to talk about that is to talk about the game, the actual game itself for, 80-ish minutes. It was a lot of fun. It was a blast. We were enjoying ourselves and couldn't have asked for more. This was the game we're going to talk about. Maritime Messi. I mean, he was man of the match. He was stud. I mean, I wondered in real time how quickly Inter Miami was sitting there thinking, is there a way we can, is Yedlin officially traded yet? Is there a way we can bring him into this game? Has that paperwork gone through? Because seems like it's probably no coincidence that they just traded. They're starting right back away. And our left winger just scorched them up and down the field anytime he got in there and got a break. And we'll talk about some of the potential calls, some of the refereeing stuff as well. But I definitely think that there was some targeted stuff going at Maritime Messi, which I don't know if I'd heard that. I think I've heard that nickname before, but when Richard tweeted it to me today, I was like, that's brilliant. I hope the whole, NSC fan base just adopts that moving forward, especially coming out of this game where he went toe-to-toe with the original Messi. To have Maritime Messi now on our team, I used to call him shuffleboard when he first moved over. I like Maritime Messi 100 times better than that. So he was torching them. So some of the, shots he was taking, I think were specifically targeted because they knew they couldn't run with him. So it was, if we can't run with him, we got to make sure he can't run type of thing. Man of the match, great performance. If he can, I think originally his goal against Mocha was credited as a own goal. I think I saw on Twitter that's been switched to a goal credited for him. So he's got 3 goals in CONCACAF Champions Cup. And I think if you had one criticism of him in his time in Nashville SC is that he has not, consistently been a goal scorer. He's been, obviously stretches the field, get some crosses and stuff like that, but maybe 2-3 goal contributions a season. And now he's already got 3 in Champions Cup. So if that becomes a part of his game, if he's been able to consistently add that, that's huge. That's massive for what Nashville SC can do this season, because coming in, that was the big question and it's been the big question for the last 3-4 years. Who's going to score other than Lionel Messi? Gosh, who's going to score other than Hani Mukhtar? And with Sam Surridge out, that became an even bigger question for this last stretch of matches. And if Schaffelberg can continue to do that, Maritime Messi, he can continue to contribute goals. That can be huge for Nashville SC. He was huge in this match. I guess that's as good a time as any to talk about the issues with the refereeing. So I can't blame the calls, no calls, the result. I can't, blame them. I mean, probably could have changed the game in certain ways, but to me, the biggest thing that cost us from being able to hold on to the win or sealing an even more comfortable win than we had at one point in time is the fact that we missed some just absolute golden chances. And against a team like Inter Miami, you cannot do that because Messi, for whatever we hate Messi, we can, hate what the presence of him has somewhat done to the league, but there's just no denying he's on another level from pretty much any other player in the league. And unfortunately, for all the hope that Luis Suarez's legs were gone, he's looking like he's still got enough in the tank that he can be a game changer too. So when you've got 2 just cheat code goal scorers like that in a team, you can't miss your chances. And I was thinking about it, I thought Alex Muil played really well. He worked his butt off. I think he gets unfairly maligned by some of our fan base, just because, would you like to have a more skilled, a more technically gifted player than Alex Muil? Absolutely. But I mean, nobody is the Swiss Army knife. Nobody can play any position, work his butt off like him. You need a guy like that in the squad. And there was 2 or 3 times that he got on the end of chances where I was thinking, man, if we had Surge up top and Boyd kind of playing on the wing where Muil was, and Boyd was the player getting on the end of those chances, could have been a very different game. We could have been up 3-4-0, 3-4-1 at certain points in the match, but just didn't hit those chances. And I don't want to blame Alex Moyle. Like, that's not his role to play. Like, his role to play is to be a grinder, to be a workhorse. He's not part of the team to be one of our goal scorers. If he puts a goal in here and there, great. But that's not his role. And the injury to Surridge, the injury to Randall Leal, he's almost like he's so injured now, I almost forget about him sometimes. But if we'd had the chance, if we'd gotten those chances, we go up, the whole game's different. It doesn't really matter. Because, the Redondo one, the elbow to Schaffelberg, Maritime Messi, 100% red card. I have no idea what in the world. Like, I can see the ref on the field not calling it initially because he's coming across him. It's a pretty standard setup for a play. That's what was so crazy about it. Was like, why did he throw the elbow? He didn't need to throw the elbow. It wasn't like he was jumping and trying to extend his arms to get leverage. He just straight ran across Schaffelberg and elbowed him right in the face. It was the craziest thing I've ever seen. And so I could see the referee on the field not catching it because it was kind of a natural football play where he's trying to shield Schaffelberg off the ball, trying to use his body, trying to use some leverage to get Schaffelberg off the ball, and then the elbow comes. So I can see him missing that. But I cannot for the life of me figure out how VAR looked at that and didn't ask for a check. Like, it was the most clear-cut red card. It was almost like, at the moment, I jumped up on the couch, like watching the replay when I got home from my game that I reffed, and said, that's a straight red card. What are we doing here? And it was almost like so shocking. Like, I think the announcers like didn't jump on it immediately. They were almost like not really like calling it out, but they were almost like, and then they showed a couple more replays and they were like, I don't know what they're looking at there because that looks pretty clear. And then you saw like all kinds of people on Twitter tweeting it. Stu Holden, I think, Hurt Gomez, Alexi Lawless, who nobody wants to agree with, but he was spot on a couple of things in the Nashville SC recap of how is this not a straight red card? Like I said, I can see the referee on the field not initially getting it, but if you've got that video, if you're the VAR and you're looking at that video, how do you not at least call the referee over to the video board to check that? I cannot fathom that. And I know a lot of people want to jump in and say like conspiracy theories, like obviously the CONCACAF Champions Cup wants Messi to go on. They want Miami in all the finals. They want Miami and Messi everywhere. I don't want to go that far. But I do think you just can't deny that there is a certain influence, whether intentional, whether just subtle, whatever it is, his presence has to have an effect on the referees and the other players, Busquets, Alba, he didn't play, but Suarez, you saw how they swarmed the referee on every single call. You him there. Like there was a mention, one of the craziest things the announcer said in the game last night that I'd never thought about this, but it's true, was they said Messi might be the only player who's ever played in a league where he's going to be going against opponents that have him tattooed on their body. There's like 20-something U.S. players, 20-something like young, South American players that are Messi stands that have gotten a Messi tattoo, and now they're playing against Messi. And we saw just last week, there was a Miami Messi referee who was assigned to the Miami LA Galaxy game who had to get removed from that game when they figured out that he was a fan. So him being here just is such a game changer, and it has to have an effect on the referees. And it's not exclusive to him. I don't want to put it all on him because you see it in all sports. I mean, like look at the NFL. Who gets the most protection of any player in the NFL? Patrick Mahomes. Before that, it was Tom Brady. Before that, it was Peyton Manning. This is how sports work. The superstars get extra protection that other players, that other teams don't get. But if you do want to put your tinfoil hat on, CONCACAF is the most corrupt organization in all of world football. If there's any organization that's going to pull some strings to make sure results go the way they want, it is CONCACAF. So, but I'm not going that far yet. I think it's just a natural influence that he has, whether intentional or otherwise, on referees to make them think twice about certain decisions, to make them call things a little tighter for him, which is with the McNaughton incident that some people have labeled a tackle who don't know what football is, apparently. I'm surprised we didn't get a red card for that just because of how protected, how cautious people are around Messi. But the Redondo one was a straight red card. I'm going to mispronounce this dude's name, but then we had Alvarez, I believe, who just out of nowhere straight chucked Schaffelberg, like right before halftime, right at the sideline, just out of nowhere, just ran up and shucked him. Me and my guys, Battered Herons, were going back and forth on Twitter about this one. They were kind of like, and you're always going to be on your team's side. And they were like, Redondo, clear red card. This one, they're like, could be a yellow, because it's a quick video clip where you don't really see what's going on around them, what led up to it. You just see Alvarez run out of nowhere and just like smash into Scheffelberg, elbow to the chest, chucks him blindsided. Scheffelberg doesn't see him coming. It's a really funny clip because like the fourth official is standing there like holding up the time, 3 minutes for the second half, and Tata Martino is trying to give some instructions, and he looks over like, uh-oh, what just happened there? And the fourth official does nothing. He gives like almost like a no head nod, like, nah, nothing there. Which I don't know how many people know this. Fourth officials can make foul calls just as much as any other officials. Like they've got the headset. That happened right in front of him. He can buzz the center referee and go, hey, we got a red card offense here. This guy just chucked Schaffelberg for no reason, nothing, complete violent conduct, which that's what you got to determine. Is it violent conduct? That's what would make it a red card. I got the definition of violent conduct here because I wanted to read it correctly and just say it right out. Because to me, from what I saw in that video clip, it meant violent conduct to me. So here's violent conduct. Violent conduct is when a player uses or attempts to use excessive force or brutality against an opponent when not challenging for the ball. He knocked the crap out of Schaffelberg. Excessive force. Could say brutality. Nowhere near the ball. Wasn't challenging for the ball at all. Now, there's no like he was like blocking him off. He looks dead at Schaffelberg, runs up to him, goes, decks him. So that was a red card for me. So I thought there was 2 straight red cards in the game. I'll, listen to other interpretations because that was one where if you don't think it's aggressive enough, physical enough, brutal enough, brutality is that keyword there, excessive force, you don't think it meets that criteria for violent conduct, fine. It's definitely a yellow card though, and the fourth official staring right at it and does nothing. There were some shouts for a penalty on Tyler Boyd when he was breaking in, and Drake Callender kind of looked to maybe take him out. That one was touch and go. I think some of the justification, they said there was an offside somewhere in the build up to it, but that was never shown clearly. But it wasn't, that was one where if the referee had given us a penalty in the moment, I think it would have stood. But it was also one I don't think there was enough that VAR was going to overturn it, especially if they're not going to overturn like a straight elbow to the jugular. So that was that. And then obviously the big one later, the Shaq Moore goal, which came back for an offsides, that happened about like 6 passes before the goal happened. Like they had to go deep to find Shaq Moore being off by like eyelash. And I've also seen, like, I haven't seen a replay or seen anything like this. I think it was on Club and Country USA. Go listen to that if you don't. It's a great breakdown of everything Nashville SC does. Tim Sullivan mentioned that there was a very similar borderline almost offside in the buildup to Miami's equalizer that apparently didn't get deep dive review that Shaq Moore got. So a little bit of shadiness there, but once again, like I said, I'm not going to go conspiracy brain here. I think it is just kind of the natural ref protection that superstars get to a certain extent. But I mean, once again, like I said, it is CONCACAF, so you got to be a little bit suspicious. You got to be a little bit suspicious in that one. What was the Godoy incident? Like, I have never figured out why all the players, like Suarez was like losing his mind. And like, it was a play where like Anibal Godoy hadn't even been involved in like the direct play. Like, I think it was like a Sean Davis blocked a shot from Messi. And then all of a sudden Suarez is like screaming in Anibal Godoy's face. And once again, where are the refs? I mean, he's shoving Anibal Godoy. Messi's like finger pointing right in his face. The refs like nowhere to be found, just lets it all go. That was weird because I just didn't understand why. I tweeted this. I watched the Inter Miami Orlando game when Suarez had a similar incident where he just lost his mind for no reason. He's biting somebody this year. There's no doubt he is not getting through the full MLS season, because this is the thing. I think it was Cavincio tweeted a video where he was talking about how Messi's vibe has been a little different in MLS than maybe it was through a lot of his time at Barcelona and PSG. Like, he seems like he's a little more agitated. He's like getting refs' faces more. He's getting players' faces more. And I don't know if they thought they'd just come over here and just be able to do whatever they wanted, or they're not used to like the more kind of like scrappy physicality of the MLS. But I don't know. I think it's kind of getting under his skin. I think it's already getting under Suarez's skin, which his history, that's not going to end well. I don't know, DraftKings put up the odds. Is Luis Suarez going to bite somebody this season in MLS? I would take that, because it's going to be a long season. And if he's 2 games in losing his mind the way he has against Orlando and now against us, he ain't making it through the season without biting somebody. I'm just going to say that. All right, let's take a quick break. Let's look at what's going on in the chat here. Hunter says, Twellman brought it up post-game, should have got 5 goals that game. Yeah, that to me, like, the red cards suck, like especially the Redondo one. That's just as clear as it gets. There's no way that's more clear that Llama Vomit says 100% VAR red. I agree. But our missed chances cost us as much as anything because Miami's going to score. You just know Miami's going to score. So if you miss your chances, they're going to punish you. Wheel nearly had a banger. As much as I dislike work rate merchants, he had a good game. I mean, yeah, that's the thing is like, if he's kind of grinding off the ball and we've got like more consistent goal scorers around him, he'd be perfect. But I mean, right now where Sam's out, Leal's out, Hani's, working his way back up to full speed. When Wheel's like your second, third best option as a goal scorer, that's a bad spot to be in. And it's not fair to him because that's not his role. That's not his strength. That's not his skill set. And I agree. Like, maybe I'm a little more sympathetic because I think I was kind of an Alex Muehl as a player. I wasn't the most skilled player in the world, but I was going to run. I was going to cover every blade of grass. I was going to do whatever I had to do to keep myself on the field. So, man, I'm a little bit more sympathetic to him because he was, he's my style of player, I would say. Let's see what else we got here. I don't know how CONCACAF does their VAR, but they never called the ref over to the screen for the offsides goal. Yeah, that's one that I've never understood, like how some leagues the ref goes and checks the board for offsides. I don't think the ref should have to check the board for offsides unless it's like goalkeeper interference because the player's either offsides or they're not. That should be something that it's not a judgment call. It's something that whoever's looking at the video should be able to say, yes, this player received the ball in offside position. But if it's like goalkeeper interference or like a player's like, that's when maybe you can like get the ref to look at it to judge it. But I think every league does that differently. Like I wish we could get on the same page with the VAR. That's one of my frustrations with VAR. I know a lot of people just want to get rid of VAR, but one of my frustrations is just that it's not consistently utilized in the same way across the board. I wish all leagues would just adopt whatever the same format is. Offsides and the Boyd pin shout was after the potential foul. Yeah, that's what it looked like to me. Like I thought so too, but I think some people were like saying they were trying to say that he was off on the cross, but then you look at the replay and he wasn't. So like I said, I think there was enough there that you could give the penalty for Boyd, but the fact that the ref didn't give it on the field, I wasn't surprised that VAR didn't come back and overturn it. More world's tightest offsides. Yeah, I mean, like he literally, I still haven't seen a replay where I would like, if I was the VAR looking at that and the call on the field was goal, I wouldn't overturn it, which I thought that was kind of an interesting dynamic to Miami had a goal taken back for offside. And I thought it was like two different stories of the same kind of thing where their goal was called offside on the field. And in the review, it was pretty clearly offside. So it wasn't like, much there, but because it was called offside on the field, it was harder for shenanigans to give them that goal. I thought it was really weird for how tight of an offsides that was. How I still haven't seen a video or a picture that makes it obvious that he was offsides. Clear and obvious error. I don't know. There were some little dash lines they put on the video or the picture that said like, look at the lines. But one line was red and one line was blue. I was like, which line is which player? I don't understand what you're showing here. So they had to go deep dive on that one to get that one offside for sure. What else we got here? Godoy got shoved for being nearby, I guess. Yeah, that was probably the most confusing part of the game. Because it's like one thing if like he's, I get like, Messi's going to have his bodyguards in the team, but like how, like Suarez especially, what was he losing his mind about? And then Messi was losing his mind too. I'm like, I just think these guys came into MLS and they thought like people were going to like kiss their feet and just like worship the ground they walked on and just ask for autographs after the game and all that stuff. And the fact that people are getting in their faces, being physical, like actually challenging them is kind of caught them off guard a little bit. He's the only one that speaks Spanish on the team. He's probably one of the only fluent Spanish speakers. I would think, Shaq Moore probably has a little bit of Spanish. He spent some time in La Liga, so you would think he would have picked something up there. Leal, but he's not available right now, so that was another one. I've mentioned this. I saw Mike Jacobs gave a speech like David Lipscomb, like Boosters luncheon one time that I got invited to, and I thought he said a really interesting thing at that they've tried to, in building the roster, this was, I think, before the first season, so it's been a while back. He said they've tried to keep the squad to only like 2 to 3 languages and try to always make sure they have at least 2 to 3 people that speak whatever the language is, to where if there is a language barrier between our squad, there's people that can like help with the communication there. So like they want somebody that speaks Spanish and English to help with the Spanish speakers. They want somebody that speaks English and whatever else to help with the other ones. Because I know that was like one of the issues with Ake Loba. I believe he spoke French and we didn't have anybody in the team or anybody in the coaching staff that spoke French. So I think that was one thing that was reported that was a issue for him with his development, as I recall correctly. Yeah, Hunter says Suarez is going to kill somebody, no doubt. Does CONCACAF have the clear and obvious wording in their rules? See, that's what I don't know, because like it should be in there, because all the high-level professional leagues are supposed to be following IFAB, which are the across-the-board laws of the game. There's some modifications here and there to certain things, but I mean, it should be clear and obvious to me. I don't know. Definitely felt like Godoy said something over the line. Like, that's the only thing I could think. He must have said something, because the reaction they get, his actions, there was nothing in the build-up to that moment from his physical actions that showed anything. So he must have said something, or, who knows what or what. It's probably true too. Messi visibly frustrated after the second goal. Yeah, like I said, I think like Cavincio, the Sporting KC YouTuber, mentioned this, that like Messi just in general has had a different vibe in his time in MLS. And I do think it to a degree. I think he thought it was going to be a lot easier. I think he wasn't fully prepared for how physical it was going to be. He wasn't expecting I thought maybe he thought he was just going to walk through the league, and he kind of has, but I think he's been surprised by how much more physical and challenging it's been. We got one more here. I'm going to let Hunter go up, and then I'll jump back into some other chat stuff I wanted to do. Conspiracy theory time. We've picked up a bunch of Canadians because we're eyeing someone in France, and some places in Canada speak French. Interesting theory. I mean, that's my guy Richard Greenberg, big TFC fan. He could maybe speak to this. There could be something there. I mean, I would be surprised. We're seeing like a lot of moves kind of popping up, because it's weird. The MLS transfer window goes to the end of April, but that's mostly for like inter squad or inter league moves, or like random free agent moves. So it is possible there's a move yet to come for Nashville SC before the end of the window in April. We've tended to make big moves in the summer more so than not. I do think we need another, high quality central midfielder. That would make a lot of sense. Get a couple Canadians in who have a little bit of that French language going there. Go get somebody from France. Paul Pogba. Is Paul Pogba eligible to play in MLS with his 4-year ban that he got at Juventus? I don't know if he's able to like play at any level that you'd want him anyway, but yeah. And here Richard chimes in here. He says, I don't think your Canadian players speak French. Yeah, we've got, I think, Maritime Messi, he's Nova Scotia. I know McNaughton. McNaughton's an interesting one, because he came up through the TFC. Did he come up through TFC's academy? He's got he lived in Belgium for a while. Was he born in Belgium? He's got an interesting kind of bounce around history. He's been all over the place. So yeah, maybe we get a Belgian player. Maybe we get Eden Hazard comes out of retirement. Thorgan Hazard. He's probably looking to make a big payday here. Yeah, but let's jump back in. What else we got here? Yeah, that's pretty much all I got on the game. We'll come back, next week. Second leg comes up next week. Probably getting into more detail. Like I said, I'm going to go on the Battered Herons podcast on Monday. We'll go back and forth, share some thoughts there. I'm still my thoughts before this game, where it comes down to who we have available. If Sam Surridge is back for the second leg, that's huge. I don't expect it, because Gary actually completely turned. In my long running battle with Gary Smith over how he relates and talks about injuries, said Sam not available for this game. Hani was going to be a stretch, and then Hani starts. If we get Sam back, I think it sucks that we got the 2-2 draw, because it's away goals are still the tiebreaker in CONCACAF Champions Cup. They've done away with that in Europe. So that's a huge disadvantage for us going into the second leg, is that we gave up those 2 away goals. Basically, it's a 2-2 draw, but essentially it was a 3-2 win for Miami for having the away goals. So at a disadvantage going into that match. But I think the one thing we can kind of hang our hats on is, Leagues Cup final now, the rematch we had a couple of weeks later with them. Now this match, more so than just about anybody they've played, we've showed that we can go toe-to-toe with them. We have shown that we have the capability to hang with them, to give them a better game than most teams have since the Messi era started. And that's got to inspire confidence in the guys. They've got to have a little bit more belief in these guys. I think if you watch the 5-0 drubbing that Miami gave Orlando, I thought the biggest thing in that game, I don't think it was that Miami was just so much better than Orlando. I think Orlando had a weird bad strategy for that game. They didn't play the way they normally play. And once Miami got like 2 goals, Orlando was just so shell-shocked that they completely fell apart. It was just like they lost all their confidence, they lost all their composure, and it was gonna be a run. And I told the guys on Battered Heron when we previewed this game, I said, "That's, to me, the big difference I see, whether we had Hani, whether we had Sam Surge, or whoever was out there for us. Our guys, Gary Smith's gonna set them up to defend. You can hate it. It's fine. It's not always the most fun way to play football, but it's effective when it's effective." And so I thought, we're going to be set up well defensively, might have some chances on the break, but bigger than that, we're not going to compromise our way of playing because Messi. We're not going to be afraid of Messi the way other teams are, where they're going to, we got to change our style of play. We got to play a back five, or we're going to have somebody man mark him. We are going to set up the way we set up and play. And we've had enough games against him now that we've got a little bit more confidence than other teams have. These constant matches we keep having with Miami and the constant decent results we're getting has to build confidence, guys. So I think they're going to go down to Miami next week. I think they're going to have a little bit of motivation. I think they're going to have a little fire. I think they're going to have a little injury. I think they're going to give Miami a heck of a game. It's going to be hard to overcome those 2 away goals. When we get closer to the game and know more about who's going to be available, who's going to be fit, I'll probably have a better feel, a better idea of what I'd predict for the game. But I'm feeling a lot more confident going into the second leg than I did going into the first leg, which makes sense because we played a much better game than I expected us to. I didn't expect Hani Mukhtar to play, so getting him in there was great. Boyd played really well. Schaffelberg was electric. We'll see. I feel good going down there, but we're in a tough spot. When you give up the 2 away goals, it's going to hurt. And the other thing that's a little bit concerning is, they definitely, like I said, Schaffelberg seemed to be getting a little bit targeted. There seemed to be a lot of physicality in that game. We seem to be a little bit more beat up at the end. But, at some point in time, you got to think Messi and Suarez are going to need to, they might get rested this weekend. I wouldn't be surprised. I'll talk about Galaxy game in a minute with us, but I think both clubs are going to have a bigger eye on next week's second leg than they're going to be. I think they play Montreal this week. We play Galaxy. I think that second leg is going to get a lot more of the focus and attention, but I just hope we're fit. I hope we're not too beat up for that game, because I think we've got a good shot. But, they're tough, but I like our chances against them as much as anybody in the league. So I enjoyed the match until the last 10 minutes, but I'm looking forward to the second leg. I definitely am looking forward to the second leg. It's been fun to be a part of CONCACAF Champions Cup, even if we, don't go through past this. I think it was a great experience for the club. I'm glad we got to experience it. I hope we can find a way to be back in it in future seasons, because, the extra games, the extra competition, especially with whatever's going to happen with US Open Cup, which I've kind of been whatever on. I probably should be angrier about it than I am, but I like having these extra competitions. I don't know that Nashville SC's got the quality to ever win, any of these, but to be in them, to be participating, to have these extra matches, the more Nashville SC we get, the better, I think, from a fan perspective. So let's catch up on the chat real quick before we move on to our Galaxy preview. Richard says, you going to any NSC away games this season? I don't have anything locked in. I've got a few circled as maybes. This year, to be honest, I probably have blown out my budget a little bit too much with some of my travel over the last 2 or 3 years. So I kind of earmarked this year as a let's pause a little bit. Let's slow down. If you follow the channel, if you watch the videos outside of Nashville SC stuff, you probably know I've gone to Disney several times, probably too many times. So I'm trying to be a little bit more cautious with my budget this year. But some of the more close games, Atlanta, Cincinnati, I've got those circled on the calendar as maybe just, quick trip up the road for an away day. Because I said this before, my biggest gripe, the thing I'm most, disappointed with the US Open Cup situation is we played Louisville a couple seasons back in the US Open Cup, and I went up there for that away day, and it was one of the most fun experiences of my life. Just playing a smaller team, good, fun, competitive matchup, a cool environment like Louisville. Not getting that is kind of disappointment, because MLS away days, I'm sure they're a lot of fun, but I do think we're a little bit more keen to American sports, where it's not, I don't know. I don't know if that makes sense. They seem a little weird to me, but I definitely want to do some away days. It's just a matter of got to make sure the budget lines up for those. Did you talk Galaxy yet? They seem like they've made progress this year. We're about to get in that. We're going to jump on that next. I am kind of upset at Gary about the Hani injury. Don't know how a precautionary sub turns into a 2-week training break. Yeah, Gary, he's never honest about injuries, and he seems to be like, it's one thing if like you're like saying a guy's going to be out longer, and then you surprise your opponent and bring him back when you had been saying maybe they wouldn't be available. But he goes the opposite way. He's like, it's not that bad of an injury. We'll probably have him at the weekend, and then you don't see that player for 3 months. Like last year, the Leal injury was the first one that really set me off because he's like, he just had like a little knock on his ankle in training. He won't be available at the weekend, but we'll probably have him back shortly. And Leal missed like 3.5 months after that. Like it's crazy the way he talks about injuries. So yeah, the Hani one, it's, I don't know. I know there's some gamesmanship to it, but it's definitely annoying. I talked about it constantly. Conspiracy theory. Hani was holding out for the contract extension. He wasn't really injured. You say that jokingly, but there were some people I saw on Twitter that were kind of like, it is kind of weird that they announced this and then suddenly he's back and suddenly he's healthy. And I don't think that's the case. I do think, if you've read some of like Ben Wright's articles on the situation, if you've read other people's stuff, if you kind of read between the lines, step on the microphone cord, there's definitely been some concrete, I don't know if concrete's the right word, but there's definitely been enough smoke to the fire that the Qatari offer last summer and his desire to get a bigger contract definitely has messed with his head a little bit. Maybe was part of the reason he had a little bit of a slump the last month and a half or so of the season. And if you read into it, like it's kind of crazy. Like I think he got a contract extension at the wrong time on his last contract extension because it was a good deal when he got it. And then a lot of other players got contract extensions and he went from being good deal, well played to being the MLS MVP. And there was, I think I said there was like 15 or 20 players that were getting paid more than him, which is crazy. So now he's more in line with the top paid players. Hopefully that settles some things down. He can get back to focusing on the field. But the injury have been something there. I don't know. I mean, because maybe it was like just like a light injury, and he's sitting there going, "I ain't going back on the field till I get that money." Like, it could have been. It could have been. I don't think it was. He doesn't seem like that type of dude, but it is kind of the timing definitely would make you think it was a little weird, a little funny there. I was so upset when I saw 7 minutes of extra time versus Miami. Yeah, you never want to see that when you're up, but I understood it just because we had the long delay from the Shaq Moore replay on that VAR. We had a few other longer delays in the game too. So it was not totally surprising. It's frustrating because you don't want that much time. Yeah, like Llama Vomit says, 7 minutes seemed appropriate to me. You don't want to see that when you're leading and you're trying to kill off a game, but at the same time with the delays and some of the stuff we had, it was kind of to be expected. Probably was. I was expecting 4 to 5 at the moment, just upset at the moment. Yeah, so we're on the same page there. All right, let's talk about what's coming up next. We have I did want to talk about this. This is one other topic I want to hit. Rivalry. This was an interesting topic. If you followed me on Twitter, if you follow any of the key like Nashville SC Twitter people like Travis, like Denzel, if you know those names, it's been a big topic today. Is Inter Miami, is this now like officially a rivalry? And that was something the guys on Battered Herons brought up to me because one of their guys has been making a case for a while that Orlando's local regional rival for them, but their real rival is us because, you look at the track record. We came into MLS at the same time, so we've got that same track record. That season, we played each other in both of our first ever MLS Cup playoff matches. Came back, had a few matches here and there over the years. Leagues Cup final, another match a couple weeks later. Now we've got this match, this tie in the CONCACAF Champions Cup. So we've just constantly been coming head to head. And I kind of agreed with him. I was like, you have your rivals that are your local rivals, your regional rivals, and then you have rivals that you like just develop because you play them in big matches so often. It just becomes a rivalry. It becomes a natural rivalry. And I definitely think, seeing some of the crap that happened in this game, the Redondo thing, the Alaves thing, their players getting in our face, the stuff that's starting to get little things are starting to get a little agitating to Nashville SC fans. I think they're getting under our skin a little bit because I think we definitely had a little, going back to that first season, I remember playing in the playoffs, there's definitely a lot of animosity between our fan base towards them because we're coming into the league at the same time, both expansion clubs. And they were the big shiny thing that everybody loved. They had Gonzalo Higuain. They had Blaise Matuidi. None of those players were legally signed to be played. They broke all the rules to sign those players, which how they got everybody now, nobody knows. But it was like and nobody even talked about Nashville. People were talking about we might be one of the worst expansion teams of all time. It was a terrible roster. Oh, what are they doing? They're not even trying to win. And then we were like really good that year. Like I think we finished like 3rd or 4th, and Miami barely squeaked in the playoffs, and we beat them in the playoffs. So it was there was a little bit there. And then I said like to them, I said one of the things that I think has hindered Nashville SC's ability to develop rivalries was us jumping over to the West for a season. Stunk. Like nobody we played over there. Like, what are we going to be? Real Salt Lake's big rival, like the fierce rivalry between Nashville SC and Real Salt Lake. And then when we came back, they like MLS has tried to set us up with Charlotte a little bit because I think Atlanta already had Orlando, Columbus already had Cincinnati, and they wanted Miami, Orlando. But Atlanta, from a regional perspective, makes sense. But like I said on the Battered Herons podcast, we haven't had any like real key big matches against him, and those are what make you get fierce rivalries is when you're constantly playing for big competitions, constantly playing for position in the league, for advancement in the cups. And we haven't had those same type of matches with Atlanta. We probably, outside of Miami, maybe Orlando has probably been the next team that we've had the most big key matches against. So I consider Miami a rivalry. It's not full on like all time rivalry yet, but I think it's getting there. I think after this game, the way the fan base reacted, the way the players acted on the field, there's something there. I think it's a rivalry. I think the presence of Messi, just like every team's going to have a little bit of animosity towards him. And I think just the fact that we keep having to play him is starting to get a little agitated and starting to get under people's skin. I think that's going to start to kind of lead to something there. So yeah. Let's just Lama Vomit says, I think so. We've played a lot of big games against each other. Yeah, like that's what I said. In the comparison I made was I talked about like the biggest rivalry in the NBA is the Lakers and the Celtics, and they're on opposite sides of the country from each other, but they've played each other so many big games over the years, they become a huge rivalry. And one of the guys on Battered Herons, he said, who's Real Madrid's biggest rivalry? Is it Atletico Madrid? No, it's Barcelona, because they're the teams that are more often going head to head with each other. Who's Manchester United's big rival? Is it their neighbor city? No, historically, traditionally, it's Liverpool. So it's the teams that you're always fighting with for position. That's who becomes your rivals. The little local, you have like we talk a lot of trash for Cincinnati fans. Like they're bringing on themselves to a certain degree, but their rivalry is always going to be Columbus because they're like right there with each other. That's a very natural local rivalry. And I don't know. I feel it more with Miami. Like when we play Cincinnati, I want to beat Cincinnati just because their fans kind of annoy me. But team perspective, I do think there's something bubbling there. I think we're on the start of something that could be pretty cool going forward for a long time. Games do seem a bit more chippy against Miami. Personally, I just want Miami to lose as much as possible while Messi is there. Messi just raised the stakes. And then here's the key one. Basically, screw Florida and Ohio. This just occurred to me because you say like screw Florida and Ohio. And I do think maybe like one of the other reasons, maybe at least for me, I don't put as much of a rivalry on Atlanta is I grew up going to Atlanta all the time. Like when Nashville wasn't like the big growing city, we'd go to Atlanta every summer. Like me and my family grew up as Braves fans. We'd go every summer to go see Braves games all summer long. When I was a kid, like the bands I was into, like Blink-182, never. Can I get it on camera here? How do I get this? Where is it? There it is. Blink never came to Nashville. Like last summer when I went to the show, that was the first time I think they've ever come to Nashville. So we'd always have to go like down to Atlanta if we want to see Blink-182 and bands like that. So Atlanta was like almost like a second city to me. I spent a lot of time there growing up. So I don't know that I have the natural animosity toward them that maybe I should, because they're close, but like I like Atlanta. I like going to Atlanta. It's a fun city. I always enjoyed it. So maybe that's another reason I don't really put as much of a rivalry on with them. But I also think we just haven't had like a lot of big matches in big situations with Atlanta either. Thought Nashville was Western Conference. Why they switched in the Southern Conference? We've kind of been punished by the timing of when we came into MLS because they're trying to keep the conferences balanced. They're like I think we're at 29 teams now. And when San Diego comes in, we're going to go to 30. So we'll have 15 and 15. But there was going to be one stretch where there was going to be like 14 in one conference and 12 in the other. So they moved us to the Western Conference to try to balance it out. And then when I think Austin came in, that gave Austin and St. Louis added two to the Western Conference, so that allowed us to move back to the Eastern Conference where we should be. The Predators, if you follow hockey, they're in a similar boat. They've been in the Western Conference. Are they still in the Western Conference? Maybe I'm speaking wrong, but they've been in the Western Conference like forever, and it like makes no sense. But it was because there's all these traditional East Coast teams because hockey's so Eastern based. So Nashville ends up being like one of the most Western teams between like, you got the Texas teams, you got Nashville, you jump over and that's Colorado, California on. So like there's this huge gap in like the middle of the country where there's no hockey teams. So like somehow Nashville ends up being one of the actually like most Western teams, but also because we were newer and kind of came in late, I think we also got shafted on that. So, but Nashville SC got shafted for a season because we were new. They didn't want to move teams like, I don't know who else they could have moved from the West to the East or from the East to the West. They were going to move to like Chicago, teams like that. So like we kind of had got that shaft, but we've now moved back to the East. And I think with the next team that's coming in, I think is San Diego, which will get to 15-15. So I think we're locked into being the East moving forward, which is what we should be. Yeah, Hunter, I knew somebody in here would have more knowledge of the Preds than me. He says Preds are West because Detroit will nuke any Eastern expansion. Aren't they in the East now? I think I was listening to something the other day that like they used to be in the West and they moved to the East because they were wanting to be grouped with all the original six. So they're in the East now, and like Chicago's maybe like one of the weird ones that's in the West too, like us. I don't know. Fans I don't like: LAFC, Atlanta, Miami, NYCFC. That's a fair group. That's a fair group. Like I think some of like the LFC, Atlanta, Miami, NYC FC is they got gifted a lot of big success right out of the gates, and they don't know how to be anything but the cocky top teams. That when you come in and you win right away, that always is going to turn you a little bit sour. So I don't like Miami. Main rival confirmed. Thank you, Lama Vomit. I'll report back to my guy over at Battered Herons, who will be happy to hear that because he's been fighting the cause. That and what I said to him is like they kind of like I think their rivalry, at least with those guys, got to follow them and see how they kind of interact. Is they have a similar rivalry like that Nashville has with Cincinnati, where there's like a lot of Twitter trash talk, but it's like, does it really matter when we haven't had that many games where it really mattered who won or lost between us and Cincinnati? And I think that's what makes the rivalries is those important games, who wins, who loses. So Miami's our rival. It's been officially decided here on the show tonight. What else we got to talk about? We got to talk about Galaxy. We actually have a game that does not involve Lionel Messi. Sunday afternoon kickoff. Kind of excited about that. I've kind of liked these kind of afternoon kickoffs we've got so far. I'm guessing we're getting those because of the CONCACAF Champions schedule where we need the extra day's rest between the Thursday game, and so they bump us to Sunday. I'm kind of liking these Sunday afternoon kickoffs. Those Saturday 7:30 kickoffs are like not the greatest time especially because MLS never kicks off on time. So like a 7:30 kickoff on a Saturday night ends up being like an 8:15 kickoff, and so you don't get home to like 11 or 12 o'clock, which for the young people out there in the world, I'm sure there's a lot of people that love going to those Nashville SC games and then popping over to Broadway or wherever. My time, it's past. I'm ready to go to bed at like 11:30. Like as I'm sitting here doing the stream, I'm like, I might have to go to bed after this. But yeah, so the afternoon kickoffs have been fun. Galaxy, I think somebody mentioned it earlier. Like they seem to have kind of reset their approach really to how they're kind of building their roster this season. They've kind of moved off of what they've been doing forever, of bringing in like big marquee stars to sell jerseys and stuff like that. The Zlatans, the Steven Gerrards, the even Chicharito to a certain extent. I think he had a little bit of production with them, but ultimately never really hit the high standards, that you'd expect. So they've been, down. I think they're traditionally one of the better teams. I think them and DC United have probably won most MLS Cups, if I'm not mistaken. But the last 5, 6, maybe more years, they've been down and out. I don't think they made the playoffs last year. I think Ricky Puig was kind of like the first step of them being like, let's go get younger players that are really talented. Like they signed this dude. I wish I had his name earlier, but I can't remember it now. It's like a Belgian attacking player who's like, kind of like we're hearing the description of him. It kind of made me feel like it was the same kind of deal of like us going after Sam Surridge, where it's like a young guy who's got the potential to play in Europe, play well at Europe, but maybe not play at like the highest level in Europe. So come to America, get a big MLS contract, be a top tier star in a city like Los Angeles. I wish I could remember this Belgian dude's name, but they seem very happy with him. I was listening to, I mentioned this earlier, Club and Country USA, the Nashville SC podcast hosted by Tim Sullivan. He had a guest on whose name I can't remember that was kind of giving some background on what's going on with LA Galaxy. And he said, talking about the matchup with Nashville SC, one of the key things that's kind of been a point of contention for LA Galaxy this fans this off season and into this season was they did not want Tyler Boyd to leave. They wanted Tyler Boyd to stay. He was a very popular player for them apparently, and there's been some discontent over LA Galaxy letting him go. So for all the gripes and issues with the front office, we at least got maybe one thing right in the recent history of bringing in Tyler Boyd. But it's interesting for the match. Like I said, like it's hard for me to preview when I can't even remember like one of their key guys' names that came in. But I mean, we've seen Ricky Puig a few times against us, and he's legit like game controlling type midfielder. I'd love to know how that happened, because I remember like 2-3 years ago, he was being talked about like he was going to be like the next great Barcelona midfielder. He was going to be the next Xavi. He was going to be the next Iniesta. Like, I was so high on him when he was breaking into the Barcelona first team. And then he just, I don't follow the Liga that closely, so I don't really know what happened. And he just apparently faded out and somehow ends up at LA Galaxy in his like mid-20s. Like, what in the world? Like, the way like Pedri and Gavi are talked about now, that's how like Ricky Puig was being talked about like maybe 3-4 years ago. So I'd love like somebody who follows Galaxy closer should have invited a guest on or found a guest to come on the show to explain it. Because I'm like, how did this guy go from being like the crowned prince of Barcelona to, hate to like put MLS down, but I mean, that it's crazy. Like, for a player who was supposed to be like the next great Barcelona player to like, before he hits his prime, to bump over to MLS. But it's been good for Galaxy. Like, they came here one time and he kind of ran circles around us a little bit there. So he will probably give them a lot today. The Belgian dude, who I can't remember his name, I'm sure he'll do some things. I think the concern for us is, at this point, that brutal like war we just had with Miami. Do we even play anybody? Like, Walker, couldn't finish the game. Schaffelberg got knocked all over the place. Hani's just now coming back from injury. Godoy, he's no spring chicken. I don't know that he can play 2 games in 4 days. I expect guys like Drew Yearwood, Mackenzie Gaines to kind of be brought into the team. Jack Marr, who didn't start, wouldn't be surprised at all if we go with Jack Marr and McNaughton and Rest Zimmerman. Taylor Washington maybe starts. Lovitz gets a rest. I could see heavy rotation for this game. Teal didn't start against Miami. He comes back in, makes a lot of sense. So I could see a lot of heavy rotation. And as for as ambitious and, trying to like spring transition attacks as we did against Miami, as much as would suck to sit there at Geodis Park, I could see this being a lot more like the Red Bulls match and the Colorado match than the Miami match, where we're just, trying to not lose, which is, not a popular thing with Gary Smith and our fan base. But I mean, if you're trying to save people for Thursday, if you're really going after that match, it makes sense. I mean, we've seen it for, years in MLS where like teams, when they're in CONCACAF Champions League, now Champions Cup, like they basically just say like the first month of the MLS season, who cares? We're going to just, we're going to focus on CONCACAF Champions Cup. We lose games in the league. There's time. We'll catch up. Especially now, 9 out of 14 teams are going to make the playoffs. I mean, if we lose a couple games, don't get points here early in the MLS season, there's time to make it up. So I kind of expect heavy rotation. I kind of expect to not see the best possible Nashville SC attacking team available. Could definitely see it be very similar, like I said, to Colorado Red Bull, where we're just trying to grind out a result, steal a win if we can, grind out a draw. I don't think it's going to be pretty. I don't know what's going to happen. I could be completely wrong. Gary could throw Hani out. Sam Surge can make a miraculous recovery, and we're just going to go for everything. I don't know, but I think it's probably going to be a throwaway game to a certain extent, because I think we're going to put our eyes on the return leg against Miami more so than this early season match with the LA Galaxy. But who's to say? Who's to know? We'll see. We'll see what happens. Let's get caught up in the chat a little bit, because I like I said, I don't have any more thoughts than that on the game. Okay, getting us caught up on some Predator stuff here. Yeah, Detroit was in the West before Arizona and Winnipeg got their teams. When Atlanta moved to Winnipeg, Detroit was a big supporter of the move because they had a bunch of 9 Eastern away games in CA. Yeah. So there you go. You get everything on this channel. Hockey, soccer, everything. They're calling it Vanny Ball in Los Angeles. I have no idea what that means. I believe that's Greg Vanny is their coach. It's like us in Gary Ball. It's like if you don't like the way your coach sets the team up, if you don't like the strategy you play, you call it whatever that coach's name is and just say it sucks. It's whatever that is, ball. And that's rarely used in like a flattering way. It's like we're gonna play like nobody calls it pep ball. Everybody's like, it's a beautiful game. Let's see. I love how MLS is doing the main games in the afternoon slots on Saturday and Sunday. The LFC RSL game was a lot of fun last week. Yeah, I think they've done a better job of, putting a few games outside of that main Saturday night window. Like I watched, the full slate running up to the Nashville SC game last week, and it was awesome. Whereas like last season, everything basically kicked off at the exact same time. So you could watch maybe like if we were in like the 7:30 window, we could watch some of the 6:30 games, but then once the Nashville SC game starts, that's all I want to watch. So it's been cool to get to watch a few extra games on Saturday, a few extra games on Sunday. Like I think they probably wanted to start kind of symmetrically, on a schedule with Apple TV, and they're kind of expanding that out. I really think like a full weekend slate of games would be awesome. Like Friday night, we should have had a Friday night game tonight. There's no reason two teams that aren't in CONCACAF Champions Cup couldn't have like had a featured Friday night showdown for MLS tonight, especially like now. There's no football. Baseball hasn't started yet. Hockey and basketball are kind of in that weird, like, I think their fans are like, let's just get to the playoffs. We're tired of regular season. So it's in that weird doldrum where like, March Madness hasn't started yet. So we're in this perfect like little window where the biggest things in sports are all kind of in like weird dead periods. And this would be a great opportunity for MLS to just put like 10 games on, a game every night, even just like take advantage of it for like a couple of weeks, settle into like a little bit more standard schedule once the other sports pick up and you've got a little bit more competition. But yeah, I would have loved to see a Friday night game. I'm glad they've been doing more early Saturday games and early Sunday and late Sunday games. So there's more, opportunities to watch other teams and just see what's going on around the league. Cause that's like, I've said that before. That's one of the things I'm trying to get better about. Like I'm just sitting here giving my LA Galaxy preview where I name one player on the team and then there's a Belgian guy. So I'm trying to get to where I see more teams. I get more familiar with all the teams around the league and get a little bit more familiar. What is happening with Vela? He was going to Galaxy and then Quakes, and now he's in limbo again. I think the latest I saw was that the Quakes are offering him the most money. They're offering him like a full, like high level designated player contract. And LA is more like a high TAM GAM, one of those type deals, but not as much. So LAFC, he's not a Galaxy player. He's LAFC is where he's been playing. And so he's kind of, once again, so I don't blame him. It's like a super long season. He, is going to get paid the same amount when he decides to sign. I can't blame him for if he wants to like hang out for about a month and then make his decision. But apparently the deal is he's been offered more money for San Jose, but LAFC is still in the mix to potentially bring him back because they've got not as much, but a comparable deal. Carson, play on Sunday. I don't know what that means. Go Carson, play on Sunday. You get more salary cap guys like Boyd, guys that aren't DPs but are above average MLS players. Yeah, I think that's what they trying to do. I think that's kind of like what this offseason looked a little bit more like because like we've got our 3 designated players. I think Drew Yearwood kind of fits in that where they're looking at like him as like a kind of tier down guy, but he's maybe an upgrade over what we have long term at least in central mid. Younger guy with a little bit more energy, a little bit more legs. Mackenzie Gaines, not the same level, obviously, as Tyler Boyd, but like I think he's an upgrade over like Luke Hawkinson. I think that was our key thing this offseason was, not necessarily bringing like a stud superstar game changer, but upgrading that next tier of players after like the DPs. And I think we've done a decent job of that. The injuries and stuff haven't helped, obviously, but it'll be interesting to see if they can maybe maneuver some stuff around. Especially like I said, I could see a big move happening in summer. And there's been a lot of speculation that they could possibly buy down Zimmerman's designated player contract to open up some options. I think he's in last year's contracts. I don't think they can move on from him, but Randall Leal is like the 4th or 5th highest paid player on the team and he never plays. So certainly would like to get that money back and find a way to use that more productively. Feels like that's the X factor in the playoffs. Darlington Nagbe is the quintessential above average salary cap guy. Yeah. I mean, like, what has he won? Like 6 MLS Cups? Like everywhere he goes, he wins MLS Cups. Like he's the prototypical guy. And Dax was like kind of, I think what we wanted from Dax was, not high level superstar, but leader, grinder, knows the league, knows what needs to be done. I think that's what Dax was we hope for him. Didn't quite hit the levels that, that teams have done with Darlington Nagby. But yeah, that's just great shout there on Darlington Nagby. Jonas Park helped the players win at home to get field advantage away. The team, they get scared to play at Nashville. Yeah, there was a, interesting quote. And like players are always going to, kind of give props to the fans and stuff like that. Julian Gressel himself, I think there was a good quote from him where he was talking about the atmosphere and how on top of them they felt the fans were. So yeah, that was cool. MLS games on iPad, you can watch 4 games at once. Yeah. They have like a lot of options like the MLS 360, the 4 games at once. But like the problem I had last year was if Nashville SC was playing a home game, I was going to the Nashville SC game, so I wasn't watching any other MLS games. If Nashville SC was playing a road game, I didn't want to watch the Whip Around show. I didn't want to watch 4 games. I wanted to focus 100% on Nashville SC. So, and then once the games are over, it's like you could go back and watch the replays of every single game if you really wanted to, but unfortunately, this is not my career. I just do this for fun for the most part. I would love it if I could just do this full time and just be like a full-time guy who just talks about MLS and just spend my week rewatching all the matches. But I got to go to work on Monday. I don't have time to rewatch matches once the window's pass. So, but yeah, for like those times when Nashville SC is not playing, that's a great option, having those 4 games, the windows and stuff like that to watch. So, and I think they've done a bit, like I said, I think them spreading out the games a little bit more has been a lot better for viewing this season. But yeah. Let's see. Anything else? Anything else we want to chat about? I think we've hit a lot. We've covered a lot today. I think we're good to wrap up. I did want to talk about something I've been thinking about lately because, like I said, I've been going on with the Battered Herons guys, every time we've played them, and it's always fun jumping on with them. And I've been batting around for a while, starting to bring on guests myself. One of the reasons I haven't is just because I have barely been, tech savvy enough to get myself on live. Richard can talk to this. Like Richard was my guy early on in some of these live streams who was jumping in the chat and going, "Hey, your microphone's not working. Hey, nobody can hear you. Hey, you're muted." So it's taken me long enough to get to the point where I can actually get myself on a live stream that I've never really had the confidence to be able to invite somebody else on and then worry about them coming on and being like, "Oh, wait, we're not recording anything. Oh, nobody's microphones are working. Oh, the stream's not actually live. Oh, we've been talking for 30 minutes and nothing's turned on." But I think I've gotten into a rhythm now where I've gotten it down pretty good. I'm pretty comfortable with it now. And having built some relationships with people like the Battered Heron guys, and even outside of soccer, like, my guy, the Bear of Texas, he's jack of all trades. He does podcasts for wrestling, football, soccer, everything. I built some relationships up. I've got some guys that I'd like to bring on. So I think for future videos, I may start to look to bringing on more guests. So, I'm open to suggestions too. Like who's out there, who's some other YouTubers that, cover teams, and start, bringing some people in, because, some point in time, I can talk all day. I can sit here and just ramble and talk all day. But I think for content purposes, at some point in time, it'll be better options to have another voice, just not me just rambling on forever and ever and ever. So I'm going to start bringing some guests on maybe for some of these, Friday night live streams, some of these game preview type things in the future. So, Battered Herons are obviously on the list. I think I was thinking about when to bring them on would be like when we play in June. That'll be really interesting to talk to them in June, because the expectation for that match is that Messi and maybe some other players won't be playing because we'll have Copa America, we'll have Euros going on during the summer. So there could be a lot of absentees during that window of time. So it'd be interesting to talk to them, like, what's Miami look like if Messi's gone for a month and a half in the middle of the season. So, but yeah, that's something I'm looking at. So if anybody has any suggestions of other content creators that you'd like to see, I'm happy to slide in other people's DMs and be like, "Hey, you never heard of me, but you want to come chat soccer on a Saturday or Friday night? Jump in the stream." So something I'm looking to do moving forward, something I've been thinking about recently, because I think I've gotten a little bit more comfortable actually getting myself on live. So I'm getting to the point where I'm like, well, I've gotten pretty good at turning on my live stream. So maybe I can bring in a second guest or a third guest every once in a while. So just something I've been thinking about going forward. But that was kind of the last thing I wanted to shoot on and kind of talk about here. A couple more comments have come in the chat. Dax is an MLS Hall of Famer, but he has fallen off a lot since New York Red Bulls. Unfortunate that we didn't have him when he was young. Oh man. Yeah. The Dax in his like mid to late 20s, when he was like fringe U.S. national team player, that's the exact player that would fit into Nashville SC so well right now. Totally. I think we need to ship out Yearwood and pick up a South American U22 winger. I'm willing to give Yearwood a little more time. We haven't really seen much from him yet. I like what I've seen from him, like his pace, his ability to run, his ability to kind of he gives us something we haven't had from like a central midfielder. Like, we've had Dax, we've had Sean Davis, we've had Godoy, we've had Onunga. Those guys are all sit back, kind of like traditional sixes. Yearwood's kind of like the first, like maybe more of like an 8 that we've ever signed. A dude who's going to like go box to box, cover the whole field type thing. And I think, we'll see. We'll see. He's got time. We haven't fully integrated him to the team yet. We were kind of going with mostly, it looks like Sean Davis and Godoy still is the double pivot, but I'd like to see a little bit more of him before I, get there. And the South American U22 winger, it's kind of been a crapshoot in MLS. Like, it worked really well for Atlanta for a couple times, and they had a couple misses. We went for Pinheiro. He was supposed to be like our big, version of what's his name? Almiron, Thiago Almada, that young South American that you bring up to MLS, and I don't think he was a good fit with Gary mostly, but they seem to be, those U22s, they're either, home run or strikeout. So, it's I think we have U22 slots available. I don't think we'd have to get rid of Yearwood to bring in a U22 player. I think Mike Jacobs has said as much, that U22 spots are a crapshoot, and that's one of the reasons. Not only Nashville SC, I think a lot of teams tend to end up having those spots open on their roster just because it's kind of swing and miss on those. Sometimes it's either hit or miss, swing and miss. I don't know what the terminology is. I'm probably messing it up one way or the other, but yeah, I would love for us to get in a good solid U22 winger, because it's kind of like, if you got a player that's cheap, young, and talented that hits. I mean, that was a lot of what Atlanta built their initial success off of. So, but we tried it with Pinheiro, it didn't really work out. Been a little gun shy since. It says 3 senior DPs. That leaves us with 1 U22 slot. Yeah, so we've got one available if we found the right player that we wanted to give it a shot on. But I think the Pinheiro situation left us a little gun shy on that, because I don't think I could be wrong. I might be wrong about this, but I don't think Yearwood's technically a U22. I think he was a U20. He was a young. There's so many stupid roster designation terms in MLS. He was a young designated player for New York, but he's not that for us. And I don't know if he's technically U22. You might be right. I don't know. Like I said, there's so many dumb tam U22 young designated player, homegrown, generation Adidas. There's people who get upset with Mike J. Oh, I kicked the camera. My bad. Apologies. Like I said, still learning how to do these things sometimes. There's people who have been a little upset with Mike Jacobs from time to time over some of the roster moves and stuff like that. And I'm like, the fact that he can even keep up with what the roster rules are, how you're supposed to build a roster in MLS, keep him in the job forever, just because I don't know. I could never do it. Like, I'd be like, wait a minute. We got how much TAM? We got how much GAM? Do we have any yams? That was a bad joke. I shouldn't have done that. All right, Walker. With Walker going down with that knee injury, do we think we would move him to open up a spot for a big midfield signing? I don't know how serious the knee injury was. Haven't heard from Gary yet on that one. It could have been just like, late in the game, he was already kind of fatigued. He's still kind of coming back from the injury already that he started the season with. So maybe it was just a precautionary, it's that famous word, type thing. But there has been talk that, just injuries and stuff aside, he's getting a little bit older. There's not many. It's not very common in MLS for defenders to occupy designated player contracts. So, there's always ways to do stuff where, that's the one thing I keep hearing is that there's ways to do stuff. Like, if they wanted to use some TAM, use some GAM, use something like that, and transfer some of that to Walker's salary and take him off a designated player salary where he's, it's not taking money away from him, but it's restructuring how he gets that money, how that money is considered in the eyes of the MLS salary structure or whatever. And you can open up a designated player slot. I've seen a lot of people say that's an option that you could do. And it's not like you're taking his money away. You're just kind of changing how he gets it or how it's technically listed in our MLS rules. So I think there are ways to get a designated player spot. I think he's the most likely because, Sam and Hani are on so much higher contracts than he is. They wouldn't be able to do that, especially with Hani's new deal. There's probably no way to do that. You can have either 3 U22 roster spots and 1 senior DP or 3 senior DPs. They got to change that. Every time I say DP, you pause. I'm like, I don't like saying DP so many times. We got to come up with a new name for a designated player, salary exempt player or like cap exempt. That's CE. CE is a lot more friendly than DP. So if Don Garber, if you're watching, let's change that. When we finally update the MLS roster rules to explain how Miami signed every player in the world, let's change designated player to cap exempt. That's what I'm going to go. Cap exempt, CE. So yeah. MLS roster rules are crazy and probably require a PhD. Ha 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 ha. Yeah, totally agree. But like I said, I have seen some speculation that there is a possibility to potentially move some things around to redesignate Walker as a different classification than designated player, which would give us a designated player spot. I know there's been a lot of talk, with Forrester Rajago. I didn't get it right. I've never got it right. It was funny. Like somebody pointed out in my video from the League Cup match against Mocha that I kept calling him Foster. And I was talking about how I couldn't pronounce his last name. And I kept calling him Foster. I kept messing up his first name while talking about how I couldn't pronounce his last name. I think, there's been talk, they need international spots to be able to get him or even Woobens onto the MLS roster. But I think this is just pure speculation. I have not heard anything. This is just my brain coming up with stuff because I know a lot of people, when we signed those two strikers, said they're destined for Huntsville. I could see the club planning for them to go to Huntsville together, play down there for like a month and a half, 2 months. If one of them looks like something, trade for an international spot, get them up to the main roster, because we clearly need a third striker on the MLS squad. Like, Teal, Sam's, still don't know. He's looked good in flashes when he's been healthy, but he's had a lot of knocks already since he's come over. And, we played Hani as a false nine, or like Boyd. They kind of interchanged. So we're desperately hurting for a third striker. So could there be a interleague move to come before the window closes? Could one of those guys play a couple games in Huntsville, show what they've got, and then get an international spot to be able to come up? I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how all that plays out and see what the roster looks like. It's going to be an interesting season. Like I've talked about this already. I think this is kind of this first generation of Nashville SC's like big swing season. Like there's going to be one way or the other, whatever it is, there's going to be probably some big overhauls coming to the roster in the off season. So be interesting to see how big of a swing they take. Do they go for like another big move? Do they try to restructure like some deals to get some more space to bring in another key player, or they just try to supplement the roster? It's going to be a very interesting season. I feel like it's crazy how early in the season I feel like we've been talking so much. There's been so many games and we've played 2 MLS matches so far. It's crazy. It feels like, and we're going to be going till October, November, who knows? Crazy. Figured he was a domestic player since he was signed out of Duke University, which means he had a visa. Yeah, I think that's what a lot of people thought, just because he was coming out of college, but apparently because he's not a citizen, he still would need an international spot. And that's another weird one, because like I think when McNaughton, when we first signed him, there was some speculation that he wouldn't require an international spot because I think he has like partial U.S. citizenship or something, but for some reason he didn't qualify for. You can also get players' green cards. I know that's another thing. If a player gets a green card, that you don't need an international spot for them. I think like Leal got a green card at one point in time, so he didn't have to take up an international spot anymore. Yes, this is the perfect thing to end the stream on. Final thought: roster rules are chaos. It shouldn't be this hard. All right, we're going to wrap this one up. I appreciate everybody that's been watching. I appreciate everybody that's been jumping in and participating in the chat. Oh, crap. I just realized I've been trying to like record these to do like audio versions and publish them in my podcast feed, and I totally forgot to record this one. Oh, well, doesn't matter. It does only get like 3 or 4 listens, so maybe they'll blow up someday and they'll get really big. But for now, this was only a video only one, so don't go over to the Uncle Mad podcast feed looking for this episode because it won't be there. Nashville have a good sense of organization. I do think, like, for all the criticisms that we have, I think it was Tom Bogert on one of his shows recently, or an interview he did with somebody, said, if you go to San Diego, who's in the process of putting their team together, putting their organization together, their franchise together right now to get ready to come into MLS, if you offered them everything that's happened in Nashville SC since we came in 2018, would San Diego take it? In a heartbeat, they would. Does every team want a championship? Yeah, everybody wants a championship. But do you want consistency, great stadium, great fan base, sellouts galore, solid roster, competitive team? Yeah. So are we frustrated that maybe it hasn't hit the levels we hoped for? Of course. Should we look on the bright side and say it's been a lot better than some expansion teams? Yeah. Great comment to end us on. Thanks everybody for watching. We're going to end this one. We will be back. Where'd you get the kit from? This was, I want to say this was one of Nashville SC's. Was this the first season? I can't remember. This was our away kit in either the first or second season. And it's like a throwback to like, I'm backwards on the camera. I'm looking at, it's like a throwback to like the early 90s MLS kits. Like every team had this kind of Adidas 3-stripe on them. So I grabbed this one. It's from like the 2018 or 2019 season, but wrapping up, I will be at the LA Galaxy game on Sunday. So there will be a live game day vlog. 2020 kit, says Llama. Thank you for that. It was in there somewhere. Be at the game. We'll have a game day vlog that'll come out from that probably on Monday, I would guess, since the game's on Sunday. I just a little spoiler alert, upgraded to club seats again because one of the people I usually go with wasn't able to go. So we used their ticket to leverage extra money to be able to buy club seats. So I will be sitting with the riches and enjoying all-inclusive food and beverage, but I'm not a drinker, so no cocktails or beers. Have a great weekend. Come on, you boys in gold. And until the next time, enjoy your life.